Good morning. Good morning to everyone present here, and greetings to those who are joining us remotely. I'm delighted to welcome you to the start of our conference honoring the late Frederick Rick Asher, former president of the American Institute of Indian Studies. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sumathi Ramaswamy, and I have the honor to serve as the current president of the Institute. I also want to recognize and express my deep gratitude to Professor Rebecca Brown, the co-convenor of the conference and a dream collaborator. In a few minutes, Rebecca will be formally introducing the themes of this conference, and she'll also speak briefly about Rick as scholar, teacher, and mentor. But in my capacity as AIIS president, I want to say a few words about his role as institution builder and his vital contributions to AIIS over the decades. Rick's formal service began as faculty chair for our Center for Art and Archaeology, which role he served from 1976 to 1979. He then became vice president of the Institute in 1982 and subsequently treasurer in 1986, a position he held until 1994 when he was elected president in 1993 for 2 terms, stepping down in 2002 only to become chairman of the Board of Trustees until 2010. So a long inning, if I can use cricket parlance. So his time as president was especially momentous for the Institute and was a period when the establishment here, especially in India, underwent remarkable expansion as well as stabilization. The move to our Gurugram headquarters began on his watch, and the building where we are gathered, this beautiful building where we are gathered today, was opened during his tenure in February 1998. For the past 2 days, we hosted our Junior Fellows Conference where over 20 doctoral students at various stages of doing their research across India presented their findings. It was a truly exhilarating and intellectually stimulating event. The Fellows Conference was first started in 2001 when Rick was president, and it certainly is the highlight of our calendar of events. Although the AIIS has expanded its activities in so many ways and in different realms, at our core we remain a funding organization created by scholars for the benefit of other scholars. And our annual fellowship program, which funds doctoral students and senior scholars to do their research in India, is at the heart of our enterprise. Rick had the foresight to see how rewarding it would be for junior fellows to come together when they're in the middle of their research, to exchange ideas, take measure of the challenges facing them, and also build community. The last 2 days offered a convincing affirmation of this insight. Our executive director in Chicago, AIIS Auerbach, reminded me that Rick also created the ancestor of our current website. To quote her, it was a sort of homemade site that he apparently made up, as he himself admitted, but it also was our very first website. Although we communicate today with our scholarly constituencies through numerous other social media platforms, our website remains the primary means through which we present ourselves publicly and transparently to the world. And so we owe it to him to have gotten us started on this part of our journey. As you will hear very soon from my colleague Vandana Sinha, Rick also played an instrumental role in the development of our invaluable photo archives at the Center for Art and Archaeology, which was later named in his honor and that of his beloved wife Kathy Asher, a major art historian in her own right. In a few minutes, we will be formally launching a portion of Rick's personal image archives, which he gifted to the center in 2017. Not least, and extremely importantly, he was a major fundraiser for the Institute, securing major grants from the Government of India, the Ford Foundation, the National Science Foundation, and the Smithsonian. During his tenure, AIIS completed 50 years as an institution, and on that occasion he launched what is called the Scholars Challenge, where he managed to use his charm, his considerable charm, to persuade many senior scholars who had benefited from the Institute funding as students and younger scholars to give back to the Institute. To date, we have several of these awards, including the Asher Family Fellowship, which we use to fund the best of our junior fellows. Indeed, in all the time I've been president, I could always count on Rick and Kathy to be among the first to send a contribution, and a generous one at that, in response to my annual fundraising letter. I have to conclude with some personal thoughts about this super warm colleague and who over time I also came to count as a dear friend. Ever since I became president in 2018, he was a steady and invaluable counselor, always ready to offer advice and guidance when I sought it out, helping me put things in perspective with good sense and great humor. In the spring of 2019, when we were invited by the Department of Higher Education of the Government of India to write a white paper on the state of the humanities in India, he was the first person I reached out to. He traveled all the way to Delhi for just 2 days in the middle of whirlwind world travels to participate in the workshop that produced this very important document. His wisdom, savvy, and wide knowledge critically shaped its very contours. In 2020, when we launched our Digital India Learning Initiative, and we're looking for faculty mentors who could help our graduate students, he cheerfully offered his services, this despite the health challenges he was already facing. Like so many of us gathered in the room and virtually, I miss his very humane presence in the world. The trustees of the Institute sought to dedicate to his name our year-long series of events we have conducted over the course of 2021 to mark our 60th anniversary, and it has been my personal pleasure to co-organize with his former student and my dear friend Rebecca this conference that caps these celebrations and that is dedicated to honor his many services to our scholarly world and to this institute that was so dear to him. Before I hand over to Rebecca, I want to express my heartfelt thanks to the AIIS staff who have tirelessly worked behind the scenes over these many months and especially these past few weeks to make this event possible. In particular, Purnima Mehta, our Director General here in Delhi and Gurugram, and Vandana Sinha, the Director of our Center for Art and Archaeology, Elise Auerbach in Chicago, who is our Executive Director, and Anandi Silva-Nopel, who is in charge of various special projects we do. So on behalf of all of us, my sincere appreciation to the staff who make everything possible. And with that, I hand over to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sumathi, and thank you to everyone who's here. And I want to say a warm welcome to everyone who's also online, especially to Kathy, sending my love to you. Okay, I need to not cry. All right. The last few days, Deborah Hutton, who's also one of the Asher students, and I have spent wandering around Delhi. And so Rick and Kathy have been very much on my mind these last few days because they introduced me and several other graduate students of theirs to Delhi about 30 years ago in a trip that we took. We immediately went to, of course, Defense Colony, where we stayed at the AIIS guest house and were given an incredibly warm welcome by Pradeep Mahendarata, whom I know we all very much miss as well today as we celebrate Rick's legacy. I think Pradeep is here with us in spirit. But Delhi, in some ways, is more Kathy's city, right? Kathy really showed me Delhi. Rick, for me, is anchored in a wider global network that includes every place from New York, where in addition to his AIIS commitments, he was very much involved in the College Art Association, one of the biggest, or the biggest association for art history in North America. But he also had a network that extended all the way to rural Bihar, which is where he took me and another student, Monalina Bhattacharya, that very first trip years ago. And I just experienced on that trip his engagement with people. the sort of individuals. We were out traipsing around the countryside looking for sculptures that he had found years before to show me and Monalina. And we would walk up to this, it wasn't even a village, it was like a few, structures. And out would pour several people who remembered him from 15 years ago. And they asked about Tom, like, where was Tom, who is now this tall, but was that tall at the time, and shared stories of taking care of the baby and asked about Kathy. And so there was this kind of immediate human connection with him wherever you would go. And I think this is definitely true for all of us, right? As my career progressed, as many of you probably also experienced, Rick was someone who just connected people, right? So you were at a conference, you'd be like, you have to meet this person, come. And so this was my whole kind of introduction to how to be a scholar, how to be a member of a larger community. So it's in that spirit, really, that we welcome today a group of scholars to celebrate 60 years of the American Institute of Indian Studies. And this is an institution that Rick supported, championed, challenged, and reshaped over the course of his career. And we focus on three things very dear to him. Institution building, of course, but also building infrastructure, and building interconnections. So each of the papers that we're going to hear over the coming 2 days engages in themes Rick addressed either in his own work. He was often dealing with historiography, for example, but also sculpture and epigraphy were dear to his heart. Institutional histories, interactions between artists, who were the people that made these sculptures, how can we get at that information? And this across basically the entire history of Indian art. Rick was trained, of course, as a Buddhist scholar focusing on sort of medieval Buddhist sculpture, but he gave us seminars in everything from post-colonial theory, I think there was one seminar, to this early, Buddhist history. So as we come together, and it's actually that coming together and the celebration and the conversation that I think Rick would love the most, to share ideas, food, chai, fellowship. I think he would want us to welcome everybody, to make new friends, to reinvigorate old friendships, and to continue the conversation that he very much is still a part of. So thank you very much. I'm going to hand this over now to Vandana for the next part of our introduction.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Sumathi. Today we have gathered to launch a small section of Rick's personal image archives, which he gifted to the center in 2017. The collection consists of 25,000 color images, digital images of monuments and museum collections. This material primarily covers Buddhist pilgrimage sites and sites in the Indian Ocean, which were areas of increasing importance for Ashu's research. His most recent engagements were with the study of visual culture of the Indian Ocean trade before 1500. He was beginning to publish his research concerning the early networks that defined the spaces in which objects emerged and circulated. In addition, a number of historical sites from India are also included in his collection. In addition, Rick was eager to see his image archives online, and his 2020 Getty publication on Sarnath greatly helped us begin the documentation of his Sarnath material, but unfortunately we could not complete it during his lifetime. We are launching 2 image collections from his archives today, from Sarnath and Bodh Gaya, on the Virtual Museum of Images and Sounds, and which have got over 600 images, and I would love to take you for a tour of the collection. The images from Sarnath have been organized in 3 categories. Archaeological sites of Sarnath, which have got structures within the excavated site. The areas also contains the remains of the pillar of the famous lion capital of Ashoka from 3rd century BCE, along with stupas from Gupta and Pala period. The capital, as you know, that is in the site museum. Sites in Sarnath is another collection that he documented from Sarnath, and these cover the monasteries and rest houses on the periphery of the excavated site. Asher's images represent Chinese, Vietnamese, and Thai monasteries. Also represented are the Mulgandkuti Vihar, Sarnath railway station, Naya Tal, and Saranganath Mahadev temple. From the Archaeological Museum in Sarnath, along with the antiquities which were recovered from the Sarnath excavation, Rick also captured monuments of interaction between visitors and religious objects. And let me show you the, some of the pictures that he captured of the people worshipping the objects in the museum. The images from Bodh Gaya have also been organized in 3 categories. Mahabodhi Temple Complex, which has got monuments within the Mahabodhi Temple Complex, including the Mahabodhi Temple, the Vajrasan, and the Bodhigra, and also the 7 monuments that are said to be associated with Buddha's first 7 weeks after his enlightenment. There's a category called Modern Bodh Gaya, and Janice suggested we should call it Devotional Bodh Gaya. So we'll change that. I agree with her. And so this collection consists of documentation of monasteries from Thailand, Tibet, Japan, Myanmar, and other places. He also photographed souvenirs associated with Mahabodhi Temple that are profusely sold around the temple complex and are often taken home by devotees to continue to receive benefits of their visits, as well as share items with those unable to make the journey. And here is a souvenir stall, picture of a souvenir stall. From the Archaeological Museum Bodh Gaya, the sculptures which are housed in the museum are recovered from Bodh Gaya and from nearby villages. And within the walls of the museum compound, the Bodh Gaya stone railing has been reconstructed. I'm just waiting for the images to appear. Yeah, here we go. So the collection also consists of images of Pala sculptures carved in black stone. So you can browse this collection and let me know if you have questions. Rick's documentation included dated folders of sites also, which he listed in a year-wise order, which helped us a lot to record the changes that happened at the site and in the monuments made over this time. As you may have noted, the documentation also covers several modern monuments in Sarnath and Bodh Gaya. Through his documentation and research, he expresses the flexibility of these sites to embrace various types of visitors, monks, pilgrims, and tourists, the last occurring primarily in most recent times. Rick's publication on Sarnath 2020 and Bodh Gaya 2012 have been the basis of this documentation, which helped us to identify the structures represented in the photographs and provide basic metadata for these images. References from these publications have also been provided on AIIS to enable further reading. Let me know if you have questions. Please browse the collection. And after this, I mean, without wasting even a single minute, I would.
We should announce the fact that we are invited students now to engage with this collection with the summer fellowship. Right?
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, so we have recently invited students. We give a fellowship, summer fellowship, to the students to come and work on Indian collections that we have in the photographic archives. And Rick's collection this year is one of those collections that students are welcome to work on. So we'll let you know about that very soon. And Sumathi, I think since we don't have much time, and yeah, we should just go ahead with the release of this much awaited volume, that glossary volume of Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture, which was a long-term project. About 5 decades ago, we started this project, and it was a unique research and publication project which formulated with the view of consolidating and bringing together at one place all essential historical and technical information relating to the Indian temples in their many regional and period styles. In pursuit of this, the AIIS Center for Art and Archaeology photo documented several thousands of temples, ancient sites, and monuments in the country, which you see in our photographic archives. A large section of the CA photo archives were in fact developed because of this project. Professor Amit Dhaki, who was a recipient of Padma Bhushan, India's third highest civilian award, is an internationally renowned historian of temple art and architecture. Professor Dhaki was Director Emeritus of the American Institute of Indian Studies in Gurugram and spent his final years in Ahmedabad. Dhaki formulated, initiated, and guided the research and documentation for this monumental project, the Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture. 14 volumes of which have been published by the American Institute of Indian Studies. He edited 4 of the volumes and authored one himself. Dhaki also edited multiple publications, published 11 books and more than 325 research articles. With his passing in July 2016, the world of Indian art history lost one of its greatest scholars. Professor Dhaki was working on this volume of Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture, South India, the Annotated and Illustrated Glossary of Dravidian Architectural Terms, Volume 1, Part 5, when he passed away. We have published the volume the way he left it. There are several entries which he could not complete, but we thought, this is such an important volume, it should be published. And I take this opportunity to thank our publisher, Mr. Jan from Manohar Book Services, who has honored us with his presence this morning. Now I request Professor Sumathi Ramaswamy to release the volume, which is, as usual, printed in 2-bind text and plates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sumathi, and thank you, Mr. Jan. Well, a little bit about the volume. After the appearance in print of the Encyclopedia of Indian Temple Architecture, South India, Volume 1, Part 4, logically and as planned, Part 5 was slated to appear. This most complex and difficult of the volumes, which presents an annotated and illustrated glossary of Southern Indian architectural terms, is now published by AIIS and Manohar Publishers, with partial support from the Archaeological Survey of India. In each of the preceding publications of IATA Parts 1 to 4, a glossary was appended, but detailed discussion of the terms and the logic of their interconnections was reserved for the final part, namely this publication. The essay Parts 1 to 4 were contemplated for updating the information on regional and period styles, and to an extent for demonstrating how the terms are to be used in describing the temples. This publication provides photographic images and drawings of architectural components that demonstrate the variations in configuration and decorative details wherever available. The glossary is arranged according to the logic of temple construction and ordering of the parts of the sacred building. The glossary begins with a description of the procedure for examining the building site, followed by an exposition of terminology relevant to the floor plan, the kinds of measuring tools, units, and measurements involved. These preliminaries are followed by a detailed discussion of the morphology of the sanctuary building and the order of horizontal components from the foundation to the finial. After listing the terminology of the structure of the sanctum, this volume elucidates the terminology for understanding the kit of parts that make up other structures in South Indian temple complexes, including halls, subsidiary shrines, ancillary buildings, the cloister, and finally the temple compound walls and their gateways. Thank you so much.